Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Hi, Lisa. How you doing? Wonderful. Hi, Katie. Are you liking our new cozy set?
Oh my God. I got my feet up. For the people who are listening and can't see, this is just the best.
It's way more relaxing for sure. All right. I'm really excited about this week's guest. So I'm going to bring her in, introduce her, and we're going to get the conversation going. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Charryse Johnson. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome. We're so excited to chat with you. But before we get started with our big question, let our listeners know the type of work you do.
So I'm a licensed clinical mental health therapist and a registered yoga teacher, an RYT 500. So I use a lot of mindfulness, working with individuals and corporations around what does it mean to be well, and what does that look like in connection with other people and not just in connection with yourself.
Whoa.
It was so succinct, but there was so much in there.
I know.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's the brief version.
Wow. I'm sure we'll probably get into that. So let's go ahead and we'll ask you the big question around here, which is, what is a belief you once had that you no longer have that has impacted your life in a meaningful way?
Yeah, a belief that I once had that I no longer have is that there is an actual picture of success. I think that is something that we are just ingrained in our mind through media, through families' ideas of success or various things that we pick up along the way. And I've learned that having a specific picture that you're trying to measure up to can really keep you from being authentic, from evolving, from pivoting, can become more of a trap and a disappointment than a actual reality. So I feel like letting that go completely changed life for me and allowed me to focus on what does success look like for me right now in this season, based on my demands, based on this context of life. And it's not going to look the same every day.
That's so good. I would be super curious, and I'm sure our listeners would be, to understand what was that picture for you in the past? Mm-hmm. What was the picture you had? And then how have you deviated from that? And then the changes, because like you said, it's not going to be the same. Yeah. Success for me in 2020 was different than success for me in 2025.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear, a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you even hit on a great example. Success for me was always ingrained into the get married, have 2.5 kids, make sure that you can vacation, work hard, grind hard, do all the things, sacrifice, be selfless, just this long, exhausting list of all these things that you need to be. Oh, and you need to make sure that you look good, while you do it. Of course, because if you don't look good while you're doing it, then it doesn't
count, right?
It doesn't count.
Don't look like you're working hard at work.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yes. Like, is there really a look for that?
Yeah.
So, that the turning point was just honestly growing and realizing like this is not sustainable, and it doesn't take into account a million different factors around, what I need or the people that I love need. And 2020 just added to that for me. I remember just even 2020 being in pandemic and then post-pandemic and asking myself, like, I used to do all those things. Like, I used to be here in this office at the same time by 6 o'clock in the grind and the push, and not recognizing it. So that was a big pivotal moment. But even along the way, me trying to pay attention to what was really working for my life and what am I showing my kids. I have 2 children, a 22-year-old son and a 24-year-old daughter. And also wanting to give them a different picture of, don't mark success by what you think we want for your lives. I really want you to find out what you want for your life as well.
That's so freeing.
Oh, yeah.
I know you're like,
yeah. So like, I often like to ask, and we've been asking this a little bit more, just like, where do you think for you that belief even came from the beginning?
If I'm honest, it really came from the necessity to survive life circumstances as a child. So I had a very tough childhood, was proudly raised by a single parent, but that also brings up a lot of different dynamics around access and opportunity. So success also became this, you have to work 50 million times as hard to move through what you've experienced and get out of it, and to try to create something that doesn't replicate the parts of your life that were hard. So it's that, we sometimes call it high effort coping that works really well. And, oh, wow, you've done all of these incredible and amazing things to try to bridge the gap. But then you get caught by it and realize that you might become a shell of yourself, or you're unable to keep that up. And that's where a lot of times you can even feel like an imposter in your own life, and me not wanting to feel that way.
High effort coping?
Yes.
I have never heard that term.
Oh, yes.
But it just hit me like a ton of bricks in my chest, because similar story, similar situation, single mom, struggled a lot with drug addiction, multiple children, and I felt, very parentified as a child. And so for me, success was like, oh, this is how you do not replicate the situation.
Yes.
So you work hard, and I got praised for it. I got admired for it. I looked at my job as to inspire all of my younger siblings. Like that was a career for me. It was like, this is what I must do, because I need to inspire them to get out of this as well. And on the one hand, it kept me out of trouble. It kept me focused. I did achieve great things, right? Yeah. And my siblings were very proud, and many of them went on to achieve great things. And that is beautiful, but I hit a wall. I got to the point where, like, I can't keep going like this. My sister jokingly calls me DTM, and it's either doing the most or doing too much. She's like, Lisa, she's like, sister, you can't do 17 things in 13 minutes. And I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah. But I've done it before, and it's worked out really well, for a little while.
So it's so weird how what motivates you and catapults you to some level of success can then be the thing that traps you and makes you feel. I didn't even attach the imposter syndrome to it. That's brilliant.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit more.
That's what happens. Go ahead.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome is that part of you that's coping, achieving, doing all the things, but also you don't feel the same way your achievements are because you're exhausted. You've hit a wall. You're ready to stop. There's this part of you that goes, and what happens if I no longer want to carry this mantle? If I decide that I want to stop doing the most, what do people say? And, on one hand, people will sometimes go, oh, you're doing the most. But on the other hand, they're like, but you've always been the person who's done X, Y, and Z. So there's a push-pull to, I need to be what everyone has always wanted me to be, but they don't realize that it's coming at a cost. And if I tell them that, will that change what they think of me and how they view me? And it's a whole process of even trying to retrain people how to treat you and what to expect out of you.
I need a tissue.
I have that
about this because, yikes. Yeah, I gotta be quiet for a second. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. It's okay.
It's okay.
It is.
Yeah. It's a very real big thing, and I know we are talking through it, and it's rolling off of my tongue quickly, but it's heavy.
It's so heavy, like
so heavy.
It's gonna be a fun. We're here to be real, Lisa. You know that. I'm in my socks. Like, we're here to be real. Yeah. I think that going through the process of deciding why did I show up and where did that come from, and then deciding that I'm ready for that part to no longer exist, and what will happen to the other people in my life as a result of that part not existing. I will have to face rejection, disappointment, reactions, anger.
Questions.
Yeah.
It'll make me question myself more.
Yeah.
It's a very intense act of bravery and courage to do that. Yeah.
I also would say there's a grieving process around it as well, in the sense of these parts of you have supported you, right? They've been your survival skills through X, Y, and Z. You have relationships that are based on that version of you. And then do those relationships function the same or as well when you get to the point that you're like, I can't do this anymore because it is hurting me in ways that most people overlook or don't see or don't acknowledge because we didn't acknowledge it to begin with. You know, the other downside of that is then you're always viewed as you're always the strong one, or you're always okay. You always know just what to do, but you might not have anyone really looking at you and going, are you okay? Really? You know,
I remember my mom passed away in 2019, but despite, you know, the very difficult upbringing, we were able to get to a good place and have a decent relationship. And, you know, she was a different kind of grandmother to my kids. So it was really good. And so we were in a good space. But I remember early in my motherhood journey, my daughters are 13, 11, and my son is 9. And I think it was when my girls were maybe like 2 and 4. And I remember talking to my mom. And at that point, we were pretty good. We were talking almost every day. And I was saying something, talking about how something was hard. And she was like, oh, you're going to be good. Like, I don't worry about you. I always know you're going to be good. And it was the first time I stopped, you know, because I'm normally multitasking and doing. And I remember stopping and saying, Mommy, I'm not always good. Like, check on me. Like, don't put me into the category of like, Lisa's so good. And I'm like, and I get it. I understand where it came from because I know that was a part of my mask, you know, like, I'm good. I got this figured out. I'm going to work hard. I know the answers. I got it. I'm self-sufficient. I'm independent. Don't worry about me. But there was a coping mechanism because I knew I couldn't get the care I needed, you know, from the people around me as a child. So I remember telling her that, and I felt very, very empowered by saying that to my mom, like, hey, check on me, you know. And we had a very different relationship. She was only 15 years older than me. So we had a very different relationship, probably more mimicking of sisters. And she used to tell people we grew up together. We did. But being able to say that to her just as my mom was very freeing. And it was so eye-opening, you know, and, you know, it was a baby layer. I was peeling back. But it was just in recognizing, like, yeah, check on me. I do not always have it figured out. And I am learning that the hard way. And for me, it was motherhood is when I started to realize, like, oh, this thing I've been doing all these years is not sustainable. Yeah. And now I'm married with 2 children and one on the way, and I can't function, you know? So absolutely. Thank you so much.
Sharing so if you, and please decline. Yeah. And if you don't feel comfortable, but what did Dr. Johnson say that created that aha, like that moment for you? And like, what was it that you connected with?
Well, it was first the recognition when she said it was the high effort coping. And I was in this women's organization, and we always like, we're high achievers. And I was like, I think that's cool, but then I've been backing away from that. I'm like, it's exhausting, right? But when she said it's high effort coping, it makes so much sense. And I knew that a lot of what I was doing was about, you know, escaping or finding safety, but the coping of it, because what I recognized when she said that is, and it's really just semantics. She said coping. I realized, like, I didn't always deal with all the stuff that was going on around me. I didn't have a therapist when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, you know what I mean? So, it was just my way of coping with all of the chaos and all of the turmoil, and my dad passing when I was 16, and, you know, having times where we didn't have heat and we were using the oven to heat the house, and, you know, just not knowing where my mother was. It was so many things. And I thought that working hard was sort of just protecting me and preparing me for a better future, which, you know, in some ways it was, but it was coping. And so that just hit me like, oh. And then what she further said and how it develops into this, you know, when you just become exhausted and then it develops into this imposter syndrome, like that whole breakdown. I'm like, I never would have connected those dots, but I've experienced that. I have a doctorate degree. I went to physical therapy school, was the only Black woman in my cohort, first one to graduate from the program with a doctorate degree, achieved really big things that I'm super proud of, but still to this day, and I'm 42, will second guess myself and feel like, maybe I'm not the right one for this. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I shouldn't ask for that pay. Or it comes up almost every day. And you want to be free of it. Like, I know better, but it's so deeply rooted that it's still there. So it was really just the connection. It wasn't one thing. It was all of that together. And it just, I don't know. It just, like I said, I have some stuff to talk with my therapist about next week.
I mean,
Just wow.
what you're highlighting there, and thank you for that vulnerability.
Yeah, for sure.
I think what you're highlighting there is when you take on, I mean, I have some of the parentification stuff too. And I felt it I felt like, something has just shifted in this room right now. And it's oh shit, like we forget to look out for the high achievers. It's kind of like when you realize that this achieving, super successful, powerful woman has a little girl inside.
Yes.
That also needs to be cared for and nurtured and seen and held. It's like that is very overwhelming because when that couldn't even exist as a child, and then you've spent your whole, many of us, our whole life living into these roles, creating space for that small child who, it's like, I don't know if you feel this way, but when I think back on my childhood, I feel how I feel now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a different, I never felt like a child.
Never felt like a child.
Yeah, no. And that's a common earmark of then that high effort coping, being parentified and being terrified, let's be honest, to go, if I let that part of me go, will I survive? Will I be okay? Because that's made me feel strong. Really, it's just made us get through all of these different things. A lot of times I'll be talking to people and they'll go, oh, you're this, or oh, you're that. And I'll go, yes, trauma taught me, and I'm being serious. There is always a difference between what's happening on the outside and what's happening on the inside. And I try to be very authentic with people to go, I know very much how to be situationally mature because I had no choice as a child and overdeveloped that skill. But inside, there's anxiety and overwhelm and overstimulation and a desire to escape and this push-pull, and that doesn't go away just because we age.
Just because we age. It's like you think you're going to grow out of it. And you do not. You do not
grow out of it. That's true.
But I do think you can learn to honor it. I think you can learn more and more to go, I'm going to give that inner child, that part of me that had to grow up too fast, I'm going to slow down and go, what do you need? What do we still need? And shift life more authentically so that you're not pushing yourself past who you have always been.
And I think what's also really difficult is when you are a child and you don't feel like you can trust the adults in your life, not only do you have to cope with the idea that I am a child too that needs care still now, but how do I learn how to trust the other people in my life? I don't have that skill.
Yeah. And you might not have
people I really trust to take over, like people like Lisa,
other people who are
other people who are
tell me your trauma and I'll see if I can trust you to take over this project.
Yes.
And so it's so complex. Shedding the identity, being vulnerable, leaning into trusting other, oh, I'm gonna need a nap after this episode.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's dysregulating, right? It just then makes you feel like dysregulating. Yes. And very hard and not an easy process. It's not a quick process. There are no, people are always like, what are 5 steps for this? And I'm like, I can give them to you, but you may need 15 steps, right? It's also a unique process for each person. And it's not this, do these 6 things and all of a sudden it's all going to go away. It's a journey, it's a path.
Can you talk about, and this is really just selfishly, but you said that, we're talking about how we don't outgrow these things. Mm-hmm. And you were saying you can stop and honor that part of you, and check in. Can you give more detail, what that looks like? I think when you're probably just coming into the knowing of what really has been going on all these years. Where do you kind of start?
I feel like one example would be if you notice you consider yourself a people person, but also recognize that when you're with people, it comes at a cost, right? Oh, I can do this. I'm passionate about this topic, but wow, I'm really anxious. I'm really drained afterwards. I want to sometimes pull away, or it feels like too much. Often our picture of success and coping and striving means we need to get in there, we need to work the room, we need to be with everyone wants to be. We don't stop to go, is this enough? Is this too much? So honoring that might mean you go for a little while, but when you start to feel flooded and overwhelmed, you give yourself permission to leave. It might be you said yes and you need to change that yes to another time because you know it's hard to even get out the door and you're noticing a resistance to even want to attend. And we can sometimes beat ourselves up instead of going, if my body is showing me something physically, that's a message. What is it trying to tell me about what I need right now? And if I'm feeling anxious and overwhelmed before I get into something, that's typically a sign that I need to pause or I need to do something different. But it takes a lot of courage to honor that because that means you're telling someone else no and you're putting yourself first, which we're not accustomed to doing.
You know, you said something earlier about when you start making these transitions and you have to almost teach people how to be in a relationship with, I guess, this new version or iteration of you, with, you know, this new awareness. And I've experienced that in like micro ways. I remember my friends, you know, to this day, they're always like, a lot of my friends have me down as emergency contacts.
You're the responsible one.
Well, they're like, Lisa's going to answer her phone. They're like, Lisa's going to be, she's going to answer her phone. She's going to answer her texts. She will respond on social media. They're like, and my one friend, Kendra, she always says it because she has a sister who has 3 children like me. And she's like, you know, it's hard to get in touch with my sister because she's like, oh, I was with the kids and, you know, I left my phone here. And she's like, Lisa is going to have her phone. And when she said it, you know, I laughed. I thought it was funny. But then I was like, I am hyper available to everyone, aren't I? And so then what does that mean? How available am I to myself? And so there have been some instances like with events, like the example you gave, where I've been like, you know, it's something that my friend always throws and I always go and it's always a great time and it's good people. So the energy is always right. But I was about to go and I just, like you said, it was like a heaviness. It was like, don't leave the house. It was like, you need to sit, you need to rest. I think I needed to decompress. So it was just, I don't remember all the circumstances of that time, but I think it was around the time of recent losses, like maybe my grandmother or my mom. And I was just like, I can't go. And I texted my friend and I was like, I'm so sorry. I can't get out the door. And she was like, okay, I love you. Take care of yourself. And that, not that I expected her to be mean, because I have really, really good friends, but it was just that external, I guess, permission to be like, we're here for you saying no, Lisa. Like, you know, we expect you to answer, but we're here for you to say no. So I've been very grateful in that I haven't had to really reteach my dear friends how to be in relationship with me because they've almost kind of been waiting on it. Like, okay, good. Like you're saying, no, good for you.
Well, that's such a good sign of a healthy relationship is that someone will honor that and not make you feel bad about it, because often the fear is, oh, what will other people think? And then we start avoiding the people who, even when you say this isn't a good time, are you sure you could just come for a little while? You know, and they're just going back and forth. So that's great that you have those beautiful friendships in your life.
And that you could attempt to ask for what you need.
Yeah.
Because I think feeling it, and that it's like there's so many steps to it, right? It's like, especially when you're so used to ignoring the physical information. And then it's like, okay, I'm feeling the physical information. Now let me sit and interpret the physical information. Now let me put myself out there and possibly have somebody be upset with me.
Yeah.
Is a process. And like, even my partner today will be like, you just don't know. You don't even ask for what you need. And I'm like, I'm trying. I'll admit something that's maybe, I don't know, I'm just going to do it. So when I had my first child, she didn't sleep for like 4 years. She still doesn't sleep really, but I didn't know how to ask for help. And I didn't work the first year she was born. So I felt like it was literally my job. And that's where all of my value came from. And I was like, should have been like, have a lot more intervention that I had. But since I was so good at coping, quote, like, I was kept appearing like she's fed. She was so well taken care of, but I was like crumbling on the inside. And I used to have this vision of like, well, maybe I'll get in a mild car accident. I won't die, but it will be a reason where I can get rest.
Oh my God.
I know, it was pretty bad.
But I also thank you for that share, because I think that's more real than a lot of people acknowledge, is that we are looking for something so big to happen that we get to rest and it will not be questioned.
Yeah, I was looking for the people around me to be like, oh, we got to help her. Yeah. She's in a hospital bed and she can't do anything.
Can't do it.
Versus the risk of me going and saying, I'm not well and I need help. Then that risk was, you're the mom. What are you talking about? Like, I'm at work. Like, this is your job and you can't do your job. Like, you know, it was like this thought that I would have a lot where I was like, I can't ask for it because that means that I'm not worthy of the only thing I'm supposed to be doing. And so, yeah, it's hard to even like learn how to ask. Like, he'll still tell me that I would just ask for what you want. I'm like, I'm scared. I don't even know.
And I think that goes back to also not having opportunity to ask or trusted adults and caretakers that had the capacity to ask growing up. You know, I look at the difference between my daughter. She can ask us for anything. Like, I wish she would unask for something.
You know, taking it too far. Yeah.
You know, but because she had a different level of availability for her care, she has no issue. She's like, either you're going to say yes or not, or I'm going to convince you. But those of us who have parented ourselves in others, that is a very underdeveloped dynamic, and it feels super vulnerable to do something that it's like you're asking me to make a cake, but I really don't have the recipe. I know what the cake looks like, but I actually don't have all these ingredients the way you think that I do. So I see the cake, but this is so foreign, and that's very real for so many of us.
It's a heavy episode. Oh, Dr.
I should have warned you.
Yeah, you didn't.
But it's necessary because I want to give women permission. Like, if you feel not okay, that is enough to say, I need help.
Yeah.
If the feeling alone, because it's so easy to then let you should. So that's why my solution was, I don't want to die, but if I had a minor injury or something that prevented me from, like, then there would be a reason, right? So it's like, I think the shoulds come in and then we talk ourselves out. I mean, I talked myself out of it for years.
Yeah.
And what was hard was that, like, I knew, it's like even my closest friends, like, it's like I couldn't get it. It was like I would open my mouth to ask for help, but the words couldn't come out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so hard to ask for help when you think that everything is your responsibility. Like, what do we even do with that? How do you even know how to ask for help? How do you even, like, that is something I'm like, I don't know what I need. Do I need sleep? I don't know. Do I need water? I don't know. Probably. Like, how do you even know?
You know, I think part of it goes back to what we've been saying is we have to make sure that we slow down enough to think about it. You know, we have the ability to identify needs because we do it very well for other people. We are phenomenal. So I always say, like, we have the skill. We're just not used to using it for ourselves. So sometimes I'll encourage people, okay, if you were talking to a friend who was struggling like you are, what would you suggest? What would you consider, you know, that they might need to, like, take you out the picture and go, if I was talking to me, a friend who was going through what I was going through, what would I say? And start small with the ask. It's very hard to make an ask that is big and feels huge, but maybe our first ask can be with other strong friends, right? Who we know I trust them, and I trust that they understand some element of what I'm dealing with, and even just voicing what I might need to them is a way to kind of get comfortable with letting the words come out of my mouth before I then voice it to the person who can potentially help me. But it's a process of slowing down, identifying, stepping back and going, what would I tell someone else? Now, can I speak that to someone else who I feel like won't judge me or won't look at me different? And then what do I need to do with that in order to help get my needs met?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to do with that in your point of it being multi-steps, and then the slowing down piece of it. it's a level of, especially when we're trying to interpret signs, it's a level of embodiment that I don't think a lot of us have. I think, in the work that I do as a coach for, body image and stuff, what I find is a lot of people, specifically women, don't live in their bodies. Mm-mm. Like we live outside of them and we just go. And then we don't know when something's hurting. We don't know when we've lost range of motion into a position or direction. We can't describe, our symptoms or pain. It's there's a level
or
of
minimize. There's a lot of minimizing.
Yes. And I think we have sort of a baseline we're used to. We're used to certain levels of discomfort, so we don't even address it. We don't even think about it. And so I think I feel like the experience I had today, when you sit down and you force yourself to slow down and reconcile some things in your mind, or in particular, when you're talking about being more embodied, you make note of things that you didn't even realize were things like this. What is this thing? What am I feeling? I didn't know this was here. But you don't have that opportunity if you're never stopping and sitting with your body and your emotions, just listening and thinking and taking it all in. So,
and we're so not taught to do that. No. So it's foreign. We just typically watch other women in our life also do the same thing. Or if we voiced it and it hasn't been acknowledged, then we're like, okay, well, no one cares if my shoulder is hurting or if my stomach is sick, if oh, you'll be fine. Oh, okay, so I've got to be fine. So that didn't work to go and voice that. It goes so many ways. Funny story, I think I was 28 before I got to the point where I was diagnosed with celiac. And I remember meeting with a gastroenterologist and just going through a battery of questions. And he was asking something about stomach pain. And I was like, wait, people, their stomach doesn't hurt after, every day after they're eating? And he's like, no. I was like, are you serious? I was like, my normal was eat pain, and had been since at least 10. That's my earliest recollection. So I thought, oh, well, that's just part of the process until, things escalated and I, found other information. But I literally can name many different things that I just attributed to, pain is a part of life. Mm. Whether that's mentally or physically.
Well, and I think that you're bringing up this really interesting thing that I'm kind of piecing together right now, and I don't know how valid this is, but I noticed that a lot of people in my life who have more conscious parenting, they have sort of a similar narrative around their children, which is my children are really sensitive beings. They feel a lot. I'm like, or maybe they're just beings. maybe we're just not ignoring them. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that, and I think this is why I was thinking if I have this physical thing happen, then my mental health will be addressed. Because you can't, if your arm isn't broken or you can't, it's we don't, in our society, in our culture, we don't hold the same value around needing to attune to somebody's mental health. And I do think the tides are shifting, right? I do think people are coming out and talking about it more, but I do think that we have to be vulnerable and share in hopefully the safest places possible.
Sure.
Because when other people, I hear that happened to me too, or I thought about that too, or then it sort of brings the walls down for judgment and, I'm unique in this experience, right? It's oh no. And then the more of us that do that, we can say, no, our mental health is just as important, if not even more than our physical health. Yeah. And because we can't see your broken arm does not mean anything. Right. It does not mean you don't need care.
Mm-hmm. Or I think mental health is scary, for so many because it's not cut and dry. It takes digging and processing and you have to look at it and address it. And so physical things become easier to go, if this, tell me what to do to fix this. We're always into how do I fix this? And mental health, I don't believe it's ideal to look at it as something we want to fix because I don't believe that you're broken. I believe that it's more of a dynamic of here are some things that aren't in alignment with how I want to walk through life and what can I do to realign those things, and just really seeing it that way. But And hopefully, just as, Dr. Lisa, you mentioned, we can also continue to put together the mental and physical aspect, because there's a lot of physical dynamics that are due to the stress that we've carried over time. Big connection. And I think more people are opening to that convergence, and that helps them, in some ways as well.
Like, are you saying, like, for instance, like, oh, like, my neck is always so tight and I'm always like, my body hurts here. It's like that is potentially the physical manifestation of my mental health in a way, like not attuning to what I need, ignoring that part. Like that could be a physical manifestation of what's happening in my mental and emotional.
Yeah, because, I'll often work with people to do what we call somatic tracking. Soma is a part of your nervous system, and looking at how your body organizes, how your physical body organizes to your life stressors. And when you go through that process consistently, you'll often find, oh yeah, when I'm feeling this emotion, my stomach hurts. Stomach is that kind of second brain, gut constantly talking to your brain. Yes, when I'm feeling this emotion, I notice that I carry it on my shoulders. My family teases me because when I am doing DTM, doing the most or doing too much, my right side of my body, my sciatica will flare and I'll start limping. And they'll be like, oh, your body's outing yourself. Like, you didn't tell us or show us that it was too much, but I'll have a physical reaction. And then as I reduce that load, it clears up on its own. So I always tell people our minds are powerful, and we will lie to ourselves. We'll be like, someone will ask you, how are you doing? You'll be like, I'm fine. And your brain is like, she's lying. She has a headache. You've had a migraine and not slept in 3 days. Don't believe a word that she says. So your physical sensations will always tell you the truth when you're trying to tell yourself something different.
I like literally pictured forehead talking like, she's lying.
Yeah, like, don't believe her. We hurt.
We hurt, yeah. And I think that probably stems from not feeling like people have the space to hold for us to share honestly and vulnerably, like what we're feeling. And, most people say how you're doing just as a greeting. It's in passing. They want to keep walking. But if you stop and say, hey, I'm actually not well, it's like, oh, wait, what? Like we have to talk now.
Because also the fun part about being responsible for everyone is now you're feeling responsible for how uncomfortable you just made.
Yes. Which is their work, not yours.
You've said this a lot this week. It's not you, it's them.
It's not you.
Not you, it's them.
Well, this is a really powerful episode.
This is a therapy session.
And I know that our listeners will get a lot from this. And if anything, just the permission to check in and see where you don't feel well.
Yeah.
And I'll say physical sensation is there something else too.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, and if anyone is listening and truly has felt really activated by our conversation, because that can happen, just take a few minutes at the end of this session and do some deep breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth for 12 rounds, because those moments can come and they're unexpected and they're scary, but they're also an open door. They're also an opportunity, right, to tend to something about yourself, but like slowly move from this moment. It doesn't have to be quick and fast and back into everything.
Thank you. That was for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That is what I'll be doing before our next episode.
Yes.
All right. Well, let our listeners know where they can find you. Can they find you online, social media?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Online, social media. My website is drcharryse.com, and Charryse is CHARRYSE. And then I'm often on Instagram under dr.charryse_J. But once you get to one place on Google, you'll find them all. I'm not too hard to find.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. For meeting with us, connecting with us and our listeners, and just for the valuable work that you're doing. We so appreciate it.
Thank you for the conversation. It was so great.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next week.